Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Todos Medical Ltd. It trades on the OTCQB under the symbol TOMDF and engineers life-saving diagnostic solutions for the early detection of a variety of cancers. Please welcome back its CEO, Gerald Commissiong. Welcome, Gerald.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone listening today. I'm going to try and get through this presentation relatively quickly, given there's a lot of content and not a ton of time. So Todos, we develop innovative solutions for the immune system with a focus primarily on cancer, also Alzheimer's and COVID. Here's the safe harbor. So we have basically, three ways that we develop our business. We have revenue-producing products and services. There we have immune support products. We have Tollovid, our proprietary 3-cell protease inhibitor supplement. We are also now begun extracting and distributing other immune support supplements from hemp that is complementary to what we're doing with Tollovid. We also primarily make money through the distribution of testing services through our CLIACAP subsidiary lab, Provista Diagnostics. So that's, those are the ways in which we generate revenue. We did $5 million in revenue in 2020, $12 million in 2021, and we believe we remain on track to do something close to $20 million here in 2022 with the big fourth quarter expected from both our new hemp distribution agreements as well as our COVID testing, where we expect to see a surge towards the end of the year. We also have proprietary diagnostics in Alzheimer's and breast cancer. And then finally, we've formed a subsidiary called 3CL Pharma, where the Tollovid supplement is housed, where we're also developing a drug candidate for hospitalized COVID, and now with significant interest in looking at that candidate, Tollovir, for long COVID. And we also have a viral persistence related to the same 3-cell protease mechanism called Tollotest that we are in the process of advancing. So just to go in a little bit about what is becoming actually a national and international calamity. Obviously, everybody understands the impact that COVID has had. There's been lower and lower death rates so far with the Omicron variant over the last year with COVID. Several new variants looks like are going to take over from Omicron. But the tail of that is really the long COVID. And that is becoming a huge problem, which Harvard University estimates is close to a $2.6 trillion problem that is only going up because the number of people getting infected with COVID is continuing to increase, and reinfections are continuing to go higher. And with each round of COVID, there's obviously an increased risk of long COVID because the virus at some point appears to be able to overcome the immune system's defenses and become resident in people. And this is creating a major international health problem that is reducing reducing life expectancy around the world. And also increasing death rates associated with cardiovascular conditions in the kind of nearer term phase of long COVID. And over the longer term, it's deteriorating health in a manner that looks more and more like AIDS. And right now, as we all know, when the AIDS epidemic started, there was a lot of hysteria, and it took, about 10 years to really understand the full scope of what was happening to the immune system of people. But the key characteristic of that was something called lymphopenia, where the immune cells themselves get infected. And because the immune cells are infected, they can't do their job, so your entire immune system is compromised, hence the term acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS. It's looking like long COVID, not for everybody, but for a lot of those people, is very, very similar. And that's a very scary thought, and something that we think is, needs international focus right now, because Western countries where the virus is spreading are at huge risk on a population level of reduced capacity on a go-forward basis. So we started out in COVID doing PCR testing, and we decided in the second quarter of 2020 that, you can't really be a small cap company doing PCR testing for COVID because there's going to be 1,000, small cap companies in PCR testing for COVID, and nothing proprietary is going to come out of it. You won't get value. So we felt it was important for us at the time to get into some place where we had proprietary position, and that led us to effect a joint venture with a company called NLC Pharma to develop a 3CL protease diagnostic test, which could have PCR-like accuracy with antigen-like speed. And so that was how we initially got involved in the development of 3CL protease-based products. And then over time, as we learned of the work that Pfizer was doing with 3CL protease, and several other companies are advancing products around the 3CL protease because the underlying biological mechanisms became clear that the 3CL protease, also known as the main protease, are critical. We decided to expand that partnership and look at both the diagnostic, the supplement, and the drug. So what we see with 3CL Pharma is really an ability to create shareholder value without diluting the parent company for the required capital to advance the assets. In terms of what the 3CL protease does, it's heavily involved in viral replication. It's heavily involved in apoptosis, and also involved in holding back the immune system that can then lead to an overreaction of the immune system, triggering cytokine storm. So inhibiting the protease has several fundamental biological mechanisms that are beneficial if you interact with COVID. And in today's world, it seems like it's inevitable that you're going to interact with COVID, and vaccines are insufficient. And so we believe that supplementation with 3CL protease inhibitors makes a lot of sense given what's going on. We know that 3CL protease is a validated target. Paxlovid is the largest selling drug in the history of pharmaceuticals before it was even on the market, because governments bought it en masse to deal with COVID. So from a therapeutic target perspective, it has been wildly successful, although it does have deficiencies. But it opens the door really to looking at this mechanism in more detail, and that's what we're doing. So we have our drug candidate Tollovir, which is a combination 3CL protease inhibitor and CCR5 antagonist that has completed the initial phase of a phase 2 clinical trial. And we have been evaluating and doing a lot of work in the background about how best to move it forward towards emergency use authorization of hospitalized patients. We see a pathway, but we're somewhat cautious and waiting for some guidance from the FDA with regards to how they're viewing hospitalized COVID on a go-forward basis. So for us now, that's a major point. And we're also in the middle of capitalizing our subsidiary 3CL Pharma with independent financing through a crowdfunding that will allow us to be more successful and drive these programs forward in the event that just the extension phase of the phase 2 is not sufficient for an emergency use, and we have to go for a phase 3. The FDA has been non-committal with regards to the emergency and how they're viewing emergency use authorizations. And so, that is what is giving us pause to go full bore in the development program that ultimately could prove futile if we have to come back and do additional work. So we're doing a lot of work in the background to improve our positioning with the FDA, but that's what's going on. With that said, we do think that long COVID now, certainly from an institutional perspective, is becoming extremely important. So what we want to see happen with long COVID is we want to see a trial for Tollovir, because that is a huge market opportunity that is underserved. In terms of looking at late stage, commercial stage, oral antivirals. There's molnupiravir, which recently showed no benefit over placebo in multiple trials, in the U.S. and elsewhere from Merck. Although they're sold billions of dollars worth of drug, it doesn't work. We know Paxlovid is highly effective. Does have drawbacks as relates to side effects, as well as drawbacks with regards to drug-drug interactions and length of use issues. But from an acute perspective, it's quite an effective drug. And that's really, what we're looking to build around is the use of our products in and around where Paxlovid is not being used. We know that remdesivir has a very poor efficacy and safety profile, although it remains standard of care and hospitalized. And sabizabulin, which is the drug from Veru, is certainly something that is quite interesting because we see a significant market opportunity in hospitalized COVID, provided that the FDA intends to continue to advance e-ways. And so that's going to be quite telling for us and will give us a good amount of understanding on what we need for our Tollovir program when they have their AdCom or their e-way meeting in the next month. So a little bit about the data from our phase 2. We showed a 7-day reduction of time in the hospital, so from 17 days down to 10 days. There was no deaths while on Tollovir. So we see this as a big opportunity to take dying off the table by the use of Tollovir, and we're obviously heartened by some of the work that we've done with the supplement, which I'll show in a minute. We also see a significant improvement in resolution and time to achieving News 2. So 100% of the people who took Tollovir achieved clinical improvement versus just 66% in the placebo. And that clinical improvement led to resolution of COVID 3 days faster for those that did improve. So that's quite an important improvement. We also saw improvements in oxygen and time on oxygen. So not only that, we also saw significant improvements from the biomarker perspective on all the key biomarkers, IL-6, CRP, the dimer neutralizing antibodies, and there were no safety signals. So we see this dual mechanism drug certainly is highly beneficial for hospitalized patients. And, we're waiting with bated breath to see how the FDA is approaching these EUAs in the months ahead. We expect there's going to be a huge surge of COVID in November and December, and we expect to also see a significant rise in hospitalizations. That is likely to be right around the time that the administration has to decide whether or not they're going to continue the public health emergency, and we don't see how they can cancel the public health emergency amid a massive wave and rising hospitalizations. But given some of the jawboning that we've heard, we do need to get policy to support that. In the meantime, we're advancing our plans for a long COVID, which several institutional investors that we've spoken with are much more excited about Tollovir for long COVID because it's looking like long COVID could be a chronic disease, which means chronic use of Tollovir to resolve symptoms and potentially improve overall disease trajectory. And so that's something that we think could have an important component to our arsenal as a human race in terms of dealing with COVID and the after effects of long COVID. With regards to the supplement version that we also brought to market, our dietary supplement Tollovid for immune support is now in the market. We are now very focused on targeting long COVID because we've got just a wealth of data from our market research that patients are being helped with this. We also are extremely interested now that there is a pending surge. There are a lot of places where Paxlovid can't be used. It can't be used for 10 days, so there's a risk of rebound. It can't be used in certain populations due to drug-drug interactions. It can't be used in pediatric cases. So, there are just a lot of places, pregnancy. There are a lot of places where, a safe supplement is a much better solution than a harsh HIV drug like Paxlovid, which has the ritonavir drug in it that's been approved for HIV for over 20 years. So we see Tollovid as a nice addition to the COVID arsenal in terms of going in areas where Paxlovid is not authorized because a supplement, has lower regulatory burden. And if patients are feeling better, which is the objective of supplements, we see that as highly valuable, and so does our customer base. So we're doing sales now, and we intend to really start to expand the marketing of that in the months ahead because of the need for this product in the market. This is part of a growing category. The global immune health supplement market reached over $130 billion, expected to reach $130 billion by 2028. And there's an increasing share of people who are looking to take it because, this is now the pandemic era where there are a lot of viruses floating around, whether it's COVID or other respiratory viruses. And so strengthening the immune system is something that's critical, whether it's COVID or something else. And we see Tollovid as being a key supplement in that market. We do have data in the hospital on Tollovid use. It didn't do as well as Paxlovid, but it did still do quite well, 25% reduction of time in the hospital, and also took dying off the table in this cohort. And so we see this as really supportive of just the use of Tollovid in the acute stage of COVID for those people who are ineligible for the only authorized drug that appears to have benefit, Paxlovid. So we're not competing with Paxlovid. We don't want to go in areas and tell people to take our supplement, as opposed to Paxlovid. But we do think it makes a lot of sense if you can't get Paxlovid for whatever reason to take Tollovid. And we do have a significant amount of data in long COVID, which I'll share here, in over 100 subjects. It's actually an N of 104 at this point, so I'll update that data. The numbers are almost identical. We had a great response from acute COVID. There was a nearly 100% of responders indicated they had a decrease of symptoms associated with the initiation and use of Tollovid. The vast majority were very happy. Obviously, we don't know when people start, so that could have something to do with the satisfaction rate. Notwithstanding that, 83% obviously is very good. We see in what we call short long COVID, and this is becoming more prominent now, the early part of long COVID where we think the disease is potentially the most likely to be reversed. We see a very high success rate in the near 90%. And we do see that drop off, quite significantly in longer chronic infections that are beyond 9 months. So this is something that is now being talked about in the literature. We were the first to report it, kind of this short long COVID and what we call chronic long COVID that is starting to look a lot more like AIDS. And it's not that we don't think 3-cell protease inhibition isn't important. We think it's actually vital because viral persistence is continuing on in these patients. It's just that other pathologies are driving the symptoms. And so we think that combination therapy, and one of the reasons why we think Tollovir could be quite important is in that chronic long COVID stage because of the CCR5 antagonism paired with the 3-cell protease antiviral inhibition. So, we won't go into too much detail here because we got to get through the rest of the presentation. The bottom line is we see long COVID as a huge opportunity that can really change the dynamic of this disease. We already have significant benefit patients who've been taking it from the supplement. We do think the time disease is critical. If you know long COVID patients, they need to start Tollovid immediately. The sooner the better. And certainly you want to start, before you get about a year from that seroconversion date. That seems to be what standard of care is in HIV/AIDS, to have the best outcomes for patients. And we think that we should quickly adopt this same approach with long COVID. We can't afford to wait for all the studies to be completed because there are just too many patients who are going to make that transition and will become much more challenging to recover. So that would be my message to people who are interested in long COVID. Tolla test is a test for viral persistence, and we are looking to bring that into the market. So that's a subsidiary we own 52% of. I'm going to quickly touch on the other areas. We are revenue producing. We grew our sales 135% from 2020 to 2021. We see potentially 50% plus growth between 2021 and 2022, with big focus on now the supplement business that we are generating, as well as transitioning our PCR business. What we've done with our PCR business is we now added beyond COVID. We are now doing UTI, wound, respiratory, gastrointestinal, and ST testing that improves the resulting as compared with traditional cell culture. We've also launched a long COVID panel, which we think is very important for patients to monitor their immune systems and start to, infer when things are starting to go sideways, as well as seek treatment. And we also think that's a top of the funnel issue because long COVID patients will get more urinary tract infections, will get more wound issues, will get more respiratory infections, have GI issues, and are more likely when exposed to get sexually transmitted infections, although we do see that libido is down significantly post-COVID. So, we see this as being very complementary in what we're doing. Beyond that, we sell reagents and supplies to other PCR labs. And we've recently opened up Todos Botanicals, which is a manufacturer, going to be manufacturing our Tollovid product so we can lower our cost of goods sold and get it out into more markets internationally. Additionally, the process by which we create Tollovid, which is a botanical extract, can be used for CBD. And so we took over a CBD manufacturing facility. And with that, we were able to manufacture all these different types of products: tinctures, gummies, pain creams, capsules, candies, hemp pre-rolls. And we can create products that include Tollovid in some of those embodiments. We signed an agreement with Nerd Hemp, which is a company that does automated retail machines, it's quite lucrative. We expect that to generate at least between 50 and 60 million between the end of this year and the end of next year. And we're now finalizing the first purchase order, which we think is going to be a major milestone. We've seen other companies with purchase orders have significant step up in valuations as a result of that, Applied DNA being one of them. And so once we complete this first purchase order and we disclose that, we think that could be a significant value-driving event for the company. In terms of our proprietary diagnostics that the company was started on, we have a breast cancer test called Videssa that is getting ready to launch in 2023. We have a breast cancer and really a cancer testing platform called TBIA that will piggyback off Videssa to gather sufficient data to train the artificial intelligence based on and ultimately be a screening test for all cancers. We have a blood test for Alzheimer's disease, which we think is going to become more important as some of these amyloid drugs look like they're actually going to get on the market. And we need to start to decipher who they're really good for. So in terms of breast cancer, what we can say, it's obviously a very large market opportunity. And we've shown significant data with the 98.4% negative predictive value and very strong sensitivity. So the data we have indicates that we can reduce biopsies by up to 45% with data generated from the top institutions in the country. Additionally, we have our blood test for Alzheimer's, where we showed a p-value of 0.00002 and an R of 0.85. We have data that will be coming up here to confirm that correlation with amyloid PET imaging. And then we think that will also be a significant driving event for the company in the months ahead. And then obviously we touched on our breast cancer screening platform, our cancer screening platform, where we already have CE marking breast cancer and colon cancer. We have a top-notch team with key scientists, Dr. Jorge Leon, Dr. Felipe, Dr. Dorita Rod from 3CL, who discovered the 3CL protease and invented the products that we have in the 3CL Pharma subsidiary, and Dr. Paula Trapaz, who brought the Amyvid blood test to market at Eli Lilly and is very excited about our Lympro blood test. So in summary, we're expanding our revenue. We're expanding our supplement offering. We are executing strategic partnerships to deploy our products. And we've got clear paths for regulatory approval for our diagnostics. And I think in long COVID, we see a pretty clear regulatory path as well. The only thing that we're waiting on is really to understand the path for a hospitalized COVID. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our presentation. I think my time is over, but I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting Todos. And if there are questions, please send them over and we'll make sure to respond to them in the chat.
Thank you, Gerald. We do have a few moments for maybe one or two questions if you're up for it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Let's do some of the top questions from Dale C. With all this positive developments happening at Todos, why is the stock under so much pressure?
I continually have to answer this question. It's a penny stock and they don't trade normally. And it's on the OTC markets. And clearly we have a story that the world needs. And yet we are really limited in who we can expose the story to about probably 1% to 2% of the investment public. So one of the ways that we're trying to overcome that is to have a private raise for 3CL Pharma, where the whole public, the vast majority of investors can do privates, which we think, that will just the tremendous interest in the products themselves will bring visibility to Todos, the parent company. But we are also working on a national stock exchange listing. We recognize the risks here associated with a reverse split. And so we want to be very cautious in talking about this. We're not planning to pull a reverse split imminently to get to a New York Stock Exchange listing. But we have seen kind of pockets of enthusiasm come into the stock. And we want to be ready for when that next pocket of enthusiasm comes and we get to a more reasonable valuation to be able to flip that valuation onto the NYSE where we can, achieve our fuller valuation.
Got it.
Where we see significant value. And so a little bit of a needle to thread, but we're doing that very diligently.
And what is the strategy to convince people to crowdfund 3CL when they could just buy Todos shares for cheaper valuation?
Well, the reality is we love that optionality. Whether you buy Todos shares or you buy 3CL Pharma stock, both are good for us. So, we think that a lot of investors are going to want their funds going to long COVID clinical trials. I think that's going to be the impetus for a lot of the investment itself. Obviously, hospitalized COVID also, but just the personal nature of hospitalized COVID is you're already in the hospital, right? So there's not much you can do about it at that point in time. With long COVID, people are living with it, and so we do see that as a greater driver of incentive because many long COVID patients and their families and loved ones want to see long COVID trials move forward, and I don't see a better strategy out there by anybody. Better than what we have.
Well,
I have not seen anything.
It's a fascinating time to be in this industry, I'm sure. And I'm sure it'll be busy this fall, hopefully. Busy in a good way. Busy in a good way. Okay.
Unfortunately, XBB is coming. XBB is coming. So.
Okay, we have more questions for you, but we are out of time to get to our next presentation. So we'll send these questions to you so you can answer our viewers on your own. But thank you again for joining us and join us again with your updates.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back.